Introduction: Why this skill changes everything. Every day you are surrounded by people who are quietly telling you who they are. They do it before they speak. They do it while they speak. They do it especially when they think no one is paying attention. Most people miss these signals completely. They listen only to words, even though words are often the least honest part of communication. They trust explanations, excuses, and stories without noticing the hesitation before a sentence, the tension in a jaw, the shift in posture, or the change in tone that tells the real truth. But a small group of people see something different. They walk into a room and immediately sense who is confident and who is insecure. They can tell who is sincere and who is pretending. They notice discomfort, resistance, attraction, fear, and deception, often within seconds. These people are not psychic. They are not lucky. They are not born with a gift. They have simply learned how to read people. This audiobook is about giving you that ability. Not in a manipulative, flashy, or theatrical way, but in a grounded, intelligent, deeply human way. The goal is not to turn you into a mind reader. The goal is to sharpen your awareness so that you stop being blind to what is already happening in front of you. Because here is a truth most people never realize: people reveal their inner world constantly. They just don't do it with words. When you learn to read people, several things begin to change in your life. You stop misjudging others. You stop trusting the wrong people. You stop over-explaining yourself to those who already made up their minds. You gain an unfair advantage in conversations, relationships, negotiations, and everyday interactions. But most importantly, you gain clarity. You no longer feel confused by mixed signals. You no longer wonder why someone's words don't match their actions. You no longer feel emotionally manipulated without knowing why. Instead, you see patterns. You see consistency, or the lack of it. You see what people want, what they fear, and what they are trying to hide, often without them realizing it themselves. This audiobook is written for thoughtful listeners, for people who observe life closely, for people who want to understand human behavior without becoming cynical or cold. Everything you will hear is based on psychology, behavioral science, and real-world observation, not internet myths or exaggerated body language tricks. You will not be told that crossing arms means someone is lying, or that looking away means guilt. Human behavior is more intelligent and more complex than that. Instead, you will learn how to think like a skilled observer. You will learn how to read clusters of behavior, not isolated signals. You will learn how to notice changes, contradictions, timing, and emotional leakage. And once you learn how to see these things, you can never unsee them. So listen carefully, not just to this audiobook, but to people, because the real lesson begins when you start noticing what others overlook. Chapter 1: Why people reveal more than they realize. Most people believe they are far more private than they truly are. They assume that as long as they choose the right words, maintain a neutral expression, and avoid saying too much, their inner thoughts remain hidden. They believe that silence protects them, that self-control equals secrecy, and that no one can really know what is going on inside their mind unless they decide to reveal it. This belief is comforting, and it is mostly false. Human beings are expressive by nature. Long before language existed, survival depended on the ability to read others quickly. Our ancestors did not have time for explanations. They relied on posture, movement, facial tension, tone of voice, and behavioral shifts to detect danger, trustworthiness, fear, or dominance. That ancient system never disappeared. It simply moved into the background. Today, even in modern offices, social gatherings, interviews, dates, and everyday conversations, people are still broadcasting information constantly, often without realizing it. The difference is that most people no longer know how to interpret what they are seeing. This is the foundation of reading people instantly, understanding that expression is automatic, but awareness is rare. People reveal themselves not because they want to, but because they cannot fully stop themselves. The human brain is divided between conscious control and unconscious reaction. Conscious control handles speech, deliberate gestures, and planned responses. Unconscious reaction handles emotion, stress, attraction, fear, and instinct. When these two systems align, behavior appears natural. When they conflict, leakage occurs. This leakage is subtle, but it is everywhere. A slight delay before answering a question, a smile that appears without warmth, a sudden change in breathing, a shift in posture when a certain topic arises, a voice that tightens, speeds up, or lowers unexpectedly. These moments are not random. They are signs of internal activity. One of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to read others is assuming deception is always intentional. In reality, most behavioral leakage has nothing to do with lying. It comes from discomfort, uncertainty, emotional conflict, or unacknowledged feelings. A person may genuinely believe what they are saying, while their body quietly disagrees. This is why behavior often feels more honest than words. Words are shaped by social rules. Behavior is shaped by nervous systems. Consider how people behave when they feel safe. Their movements are fluid, their shoulders are relaxed. Their gestures match their words. Their eye contact feels natural, not forced. There is no urgency to prove anything. Now compare that to someone who feels threatened, emotionally or psychologically. The body tightens, movements become restricted or overly animated. The voice may change pitch, the rhythm of speech becomes uneven. The person may talk too much or withdraw too quickly. These reactions happen faster than thought. You cannot will your nervous system into silence. Another reason people reveal more than they realize is mental load. Managing an image requires effort. When someone is trying to appear confident, agreeable, honest, or impressive, their mind is juggling multiple tasks at once, monitoring words, controlling facial expressions, regulating tone, adjusting posture, and tracking the other person's reaction. The brain can only handle so much at one time. When mental load increases, small cracks appear. The person repeats themselves unnecessarily. They add details no one asked for. They hesitate before simple answers. They respond emotionally where neutrality would be expected. These behaviors are not proof of deception. They are proof of effort. Effort always leaves a trace. This is why experienced professionals, interrogators, therapists, negotiators, and skilled leaders rarely rely on a single signal. Instead, they observe clusters. A cluster is a group of behaviors that appear together and point in the same emotional direction. For example, nervousness is not a crossed arm or averted eyes. Nervousness is a combination of restricted movement, shallow breathing, vocal changes, timing disruptions, and self-soothing behaviors. Confidence is not loud speech or firm handshakes. Confidence is ease, consistency, and emotional stability under pressure. When you learn to recognize clusters, guessing disappears. Interpretation becomes grounded and accurate. Another essential principle is understanding baseline behavior. Everyone has habits. Some people naturally speak quickly. Others avoid eye contact even when relaxed. Some gesture a lot. Others are reserved. Reading people does not mean judging behavior in isolation. It means noticing changes from their normal state. What happens when the topic shifts? What changes when stakes increase? What shifts when attention is focused on them? Change reveals meaning. A person who normally speaks calmly but suddenly accelerates their speech is reacting to something. A person who is usually expressive but becomes still is processing something. These shifts are more important than the behavior itself. Even in first meetings, the brain establishes a baseline within minutes. Humans are remarkably good at detecting incongruence. We just rarely trust that ability. You have probably experienced this before. Someone says all the right things, yet something feels off. Someone appears friendly, but the warmth feels empty. Someone agrees with you, but the agreement feels hollow. This discomfort is not imagination. It is your perception noticing mismatch. The problem is that most people ignore this signal. They override it with logic, politeness, or hope. They convince themselves they are overthinking. Reading people begins when you stop dismissing these subtle reactions. Another powerful reason people reveal themselves is emotional leakage. Emotion cannot be contained perfectly. It leaks through micro-expressions, posture changes, tone shifts, and pacing. Even trained professionals cannot suppress emotion entirely. A flash of irritation before a polite smile. A brief tightening of the jaw, a micro-expression of contempt that appears and disappears in a fraction of a second. These moments are easy to miss if you are distracted by words. They are obvious when you are watching. This does not mean you should stare at people or analyze obsessively. In fact, overanalysis is one of the fastest ways to misread others. The goal is relaxed awareness. You observe without forcing interpretation. You notice patterns over time. You allow information to accumulate before drawing conclusions. This is what separates skilled observers from amateurs. Amateurs look for tricks. Professionals look for consistency. There is also an ethical dimension that must be addressed early. The ability to read people gives you power, but power without discipline becomes manipulation. The purpose of this skill is not to dominate, embarrass, or expose others. Its purpose is clarity. Clarity protects you from emotional manipulation. Clarity helps you choose better relationships. Clarity allows you to communicate with precision and empathy. When you understand what someone is feeling, you can respond appropriately rather than react emotionally. You can set boundaries calmly instead of defensively. You can lead conversations instead of being led by confusion. The most intelligent readers of people are not cynical. They are compassionate but alert. They understand that insecurity often hides behind arrogance. That fear often hides behind anger. That silence often hides more than speech. They see human behavior as information, not accusation. As you continue listening, you will begin to notice details you once overlooked. This may feel uncomfortable at first. You may realize that some people are less certain than they appear, or that some relationships are built on unspoken tension. Do not rush to act on every insight. Awareness matures slowly. Reading people is not about instant judgment. It is about long-term understanding. And it starts with one simple shift in attention. Stop listening only to what people say. Start noticing how they exist while saying it. Once you do, the world begins to speak a much clearer language. This judgment happens automatically, without conscious permission, and often without awareness. Within seconds of seeing someone, the human brain begins to answer a set of ancient questions. Is this person safe? Are they confident? Do they have authority? Can they be trusted? By the time a conversation begins, the emotional direction is already set. This is why first impressions are so powerful and so misunderstood. Most people believe first impressions are about appearance. Clothing, grooming, posture, and facial expressions are certainly part of it, but the real mechanism runs deeper. First impressions are not about how someone looks. They are about how someone feels to be around. The brain does not evaluate individuals logically in the first moments. It evaluates signals. Is this person predictable or unpredictable? Do they seem comfortable in their own presence? Do they bring calm or tension into the space? These assessments happen before words are processed. This is not shallow thinking. It is efficient thinking. The brain evolved to make fast judgments because hesitation used to be dangerous. Even today, in modern environments, the same system is active. The difference is that we rarely acknowledge it, and even more rarely, we understand it. When you learn how first impressions form, you gain two advantages. You can read others more accurately, and you can understand why people respond to you the way they do. One of the most important concepts to understand is thin slicing. Thin slicing refers to the brain's ability to draw conclusions from very small amounts of information. Researchers have found that people can accurately assess confidence, competence, emotional stability, and even honesty after observing just a few seconds of behavior. This does not mean the brain is always right, but it is rarely random. Thin slicing relies on patterns the brain has learned over thousands of interactions. It looks for coherence. When behavior aligns smoothly, the impression is positive. When behavior feels fragmented or forced, suspicion arises. This is why people who try too hard often make poor first impressions. Effort is visible. A person who is genuinely confident does not need to prove it. Their movements are economical. Their speech is measured. Their presence feels grounded. A person who is pretending to be confident often overcompensates. They speak louder than necessary. They gesture excessively or remain unnaturally still. They dominate conversations or rush to fill silence. The brain detects this mismatch instantly. Another key factor in first impressions is emotional regulation. People are drawn to emotional stability, someone who can remain calm, present, and responsive, especially in uncertain situations, signals safety and leadership. This is why two people with similar qualifications can be perceived very differently within moments. One feels composed. The other feels reactive. First impressions are not built on perfection. They are built on emotional consistency. When a person's face, voice, posture, and timing align, the brain relaxes. When they conflict, the brain becomes alert. Timing plays a crucial role here. A pause before speaking can signal thoughtfulness or insecurity, depending on context. A quick response can signal confidence or defensiveness. The difference lies in whether the timing matches the situation naturally. People who rush to answer everything often appear anxious to control perception. People who pause appropriately appear self-assured. Silence, when used naturally, is powerful. Another element that shapes first impressions is attention. Where a person directs their attention reveals what they value. Someone who is fully present makes others feel acknowledged. Someone whose attention is scattered creates distance, even if they are polite. Presence cannot be faked for long. You can see it in eye behavior, not constant staring, but natural engagement. You can hear it in how someone responds, not just what they say. You can feel it in the pace of interaction. People often say, "I don't know why, but I liked them," or "something about them felt off." These reactions are rarely baseless. They are responses to patterns the conscious mind has not labeled. Another mistake people make is assuming first impressions are fixed. They are not permanent, but they are influential. The brain uses first impressions as a reference point. Later behavior is filtered through that initial lens. This is why early signals carry disproportionate weight. A confident first impression allows later mistakes to be forgiven. A weak or unstable first impression makes later competence harder to recognize. This is not fair, but it is human. Understanding this allows you to read reactions more clearly. When someone seems resistant or dismissive early on, it may have less to do with content and more to do with emotional alignment in the first moments. First impressions are also shaped by contrast. People are not evaluated in isolation. They are evaluated relative to the environment. A calm person in a chaotic setting stands out. A loud person in a quiet setting feels intrusive. Context matters. Skilled readers of people always ask, compared to what? Another important aspect is authenticity. Authenticity does not mean oversharing or emotional exposure. It means congruence. When someone's behavior matches their personality, background, and role, the brain perceives honesty. When behavior feels adopted, borrowed mannerisms, forced speech patterns, artificial confidence, the brain resists. This resistance often appears as vague discomfort rather than clear judgment. Your task as a reader is not to criticize these reactions, but to notice them. You are not labeling people, you are reading signals. It is also essential to recognize that first impressions reveal as much about the observer as the observed. Bias, expectation, and past experience shape perception. A skilled reader remains aware of this. They observe their own reactions as carefully as they observe others. When you feel an immediate emotional response, positive or negative, it is worth asking why. Is it based on behavior? Is it based on similarity or difference? Is it based on past associations? Self-awareness sharpens accuracy. The most perceptive individuals are not those who judge quickly, but those who notice quickly and conclude slowly. As you move through daily interactions, begin paying attention to the opening moments. Notice posture before speech. Notice pace before content. Notice emotional tone before logic. These early signals set the rhythm for everything that follows. In the next chapter, you will learn how to read one of the most revealing channels of human behavior, the face. Not in exaggerated expressions, but in subtle muscle movements that betray emotion before it can be hidden. Because the face speaks first and often tells the truth before words catch up. Chapter 3. Reading Faces Without Guessing. The human face is the most expressive surface in nature. It contains over 40 muscles capable of producing thousands of expressions, many of which appear and disappear in fractions of a second. Long before people learned to speak, faces were the primary language of emotion. That language still exists, even though most people no longer know how to read it. When people think about reading faces, they often imagine dramatic expressions: anger, joy, fear, sadness. But in real life, those obvious displays are rare. Most emotional information appears subtly, briefly, and unintentionally. This is where most observers fail. They look for certainty where only probability exists. They expect faces to announce emotions clearly. When that doesn't happen, they assume there is nothing to see. In reality, the face is always speaking. You simply need to know how to listen. The first principle of reading faces is this: ignore the expression, observe the transition. People can fake expressions. They can smile on command. They can keep a neutral face. What they cannot easily control is how their face changes. Emotion appears first, correction follows second, a flash of irritation before composure returns, a micro-expression of surprise before indifference sets in, a brief tightening around the eyes before a polite smile forms. These transitions are more informative than the final expression. This is why timing matters more than appearance. If a smile appears instantly and symmetrically, it is often social rather than emotional. If a smile grows gradually, reaches the eyes, and fades naturally, it is more likely genuine. But even this is not about rigid rules. It is about context and consistency. The eyes are especially revealing, not because of where someone looks, but because of how their eyes behave. When people are emotionally engaged, their eyes soften. Blinks slow down. Eye movements become fluid. When people are stressed or uncomfortable, blinking often increases, eyes widen slightly, or gaze becomes rigid. Forced eye contact is not confidence. It is often control. Relaxed eye contact includes breaks. It moves naturally with thought. Another facial area that reveals emotion is the jaw. The jaw tightens when people suppress emotion, especially anger, frustration, or anxiety. A clenched jaw paired with a calm voice often signals internal conflict. You may hear someone speak politely while their jaw muscles visibly engage. This tells you the emotion is present, but restrained. The mouth also plays a key role. Lip compression, pressing lips together tightly, often signals disagreement or withheld emotion. Lip biting can signal anxiety or self-restraint. Asymmetrical mouth movements can suggest mixed feelings. Again, these signals mean nothing alone, but in clusters they speak clearly. The eyebrows are another powerful indicator. Raised eyebrows can indicate surprise, interest, or skepticism, depending on duration and symmetry. Brief eyebrow flashes often signal recognition or agreement. Lowered brows can indicate focus, confusion, or resistance. What matters is whether the eyebrow movement matches the situation. If someone claims understanding but their brows remain furrowed, comprehension may not be present. If someone expresses enthusiasm but their brows do not engage, the emotion may be shallow. One of the most important concepts in facial reading is emotional leakage. People can suppress emotion consciously, but the face reacts before the mind intervenes. These micro-expressions last less than half a second, but they are real. A flash of contempt is particularly telling. Contempt often appears as a one-sided mouth raise or slight sneer. It signals superiority, dismissal, or moral judgment. Unlike anger, contempt is cold. When you see it, even briefly, it often indicates deep resistance or lack of respect. Fear appears differently. It may show as widened eyes, raised inner eyebrows, or tightened lips. Fear does not always mean danger. It often signals uncertainty or loss of control. Sadness shows in drooping eyelids, softened focus, and downward mouth corners, but again, often briefly before correction. The key is not to hunt for these signals aggressively. Overanalysis leads to misinterpretation. Instead, allow your attention to remain relaxed and curious. Another common mistake is treating facial expressions as universal truth without considering individual variation. Some people naturally have expressive faces. Others are reserved. Some people have resting expressions that appear serious or disapproving even when relaxed. This is why baseline observation is essential. How does this person look when genuinely relaxed? What is their neutral face? How do they express interest normally? Once you know this, deviations become meaningful. Facial reading also depends heavily on emotional congruence. When words, tone, and face align, the message feels authentic. When they conflict, the face often reveals the truth first. Someone may say they are excited, but their face remains flat. Someone may say they are calm, but their facial muscles tighten. Your brain detects this incongruence instantly. The skill lies in trusting that detection without jumping to conclusions. Another overlooked aspect is facial stillness. Stillness can be confidence, or it can be suppression. A person who remains unusually still while discussing emotional topics may be controlling expression. This is not inherently deceptive, but it signals effort. Effort is information. Facial asymmetry is also worth noting. Genuine emotion tends to be symmetrical. Controlled expression often favors one side. A smile that pulls more strongly on one side can indicate mixed emotion or politeness rather than joy. However, asymmetry alone is not proof of anything. It becomes meaningful when repeated or paired with other signals. This brings us to one of the most important warnings in this audiobook. Never read faces in isolation. Faces are part of a system that includes body language, voice, timing, and context. A face that appears tense in one moment may simply reflect fatigue, stress, or concentration. This is why skilled observers gather data patiently. They notice how facial expressions change when topics shift. They observe reactions to unexpected information. They watch for repetition across situations. Patterns matter more than moments. Another ethical reminder is necessary here. Reading faces gives you insight into private, emotional states. This knowledge should be handled with care. People often reveal vulnerability without intending to. Exploiting this damages trust and ultimately backfires. Use facial insight to adjust your behavior, not to expose others. You might soften your tone when you sense discomfort. You might pause when you sense confusion. You might disengage when you sense resistance. This is intelligence, not manipulation. As you practice, you will notice something interesting. You will begin reading faces without effort. Your awareness will sharpen naturally. You will catch fleeting expressions and emotional shifts without consciously trying. This is how professionals operate. They do not stare. They do not analyze mechanically. They simply pay attention. In the next chapter, we will move beyond the face and into the body, the silent structure that reveals confidence, fear, dominance, submission, and emotional state even when the face is controlled. Because while the face can lie briefly, the body tells the story continuously.
Chapter 4. Body Language That Never Lies. The body is honest in a way words and faces rarely are. It does not speak in sentences. It speaks in posture, movement, tension, and space. And unlike facial expressions, which can be controlled for short periods, the body communicates continuously. It reflects emotion not in flashes, but in sustained patterns. This is why body language is one of the most reliable sources of information when reading people. The body reveals what the mind is managing. Most people think body language is about gestures, crossed arms, leaning forward, nodding. These are the most visible elements, but they are also the most misunderstood. Body language is not about isolated positions. It is about how the body organizes itself in response to the environment. The first thing to observe is posture. Posture reveals how a person feels about themselves and the situation they are in. A relaxed, upright posture suggests internal stability. Slouched posture can indicate fatigue, low confidence, disengagement, or emotional withdrawal. An overly rigid posture often signals tension, control, or defensiveness. But posture must always be interpreted relative to context. Someone may slouch because they are tired, not insecure. Someone may sit upright because they were trained to, not because they feel confident. This is why posture alone is not evidence. It is a clue. The real information lies in changes in posture. When a person straightens suddenly, something has shifted internally. When shoulders tense during a specific topic, something matters. When posture collapses after a comment, impact has occurred. The body responds before words arrive. Another powerful indicator is movement economy. Confident individuals tend to move efficiently. Their gestures are purposeful, not excessive. They do not rush their movements or freeze unnaturally. Their body appears at ease with occupying space. Insecure or anxious individuals often display one of two extremes: excessive movement or restricted movement. Excessive movement includes fidgeting, pacing, repetitive gestures, and constant adjustments. Restricted movement includes stiffness, minimal gestures, and unnatural stillness. Both extremes signal internal discomfort. Again, the mistake is not noticing movement. It is interpreting it too quickly. Ask yourself, Is this movement consistent with the situation, or does it appear compensatory? One of the most revealing aspects of body language is orientation. Where the body points reveals where attention and interest truly lie. Feet, torso, and shoulders often betray intentions even when the face does not. When someone is engaged, their body naturally orients toward what interests them. When disengaged, the body angles away, even subtly. Feet are especially honest. People rarely control their feet consciously. Feet often point toward exits when someone wants to leave, toward people they feel connected to, and away from sources of discomfort. If someone claims interest but their feet consistently angle away, there is a disconnect between words and intention. Distance is another key factor. Humans regulate physical distance instinctively. Comfort allows closeness. Discomfort creates space. When someone leans back or increases distance during a conversation, they may be seeking emotional or psychological safety. When someone leans in naturally, it often indicates engagement or trust. Forced closeness, however, can feel invasive rather than warm. The body senses this immediately. Touch, or the lack of it, also communicates volumes. Appropriate, relaxed touch can signal comfort and rapport. Avoidance of touch can signal boundaries, discomfort, or cultural preference. Excessive or poorly timed touch often signals insecurity or a desire for control. As with all body language, interpretation must consider context, culture, and baseline behavior. Another important concept is mirroring. When people feel connected, their bodies naturally synchronize. They adopt similar postures, rhythms, and movements. This mirroring is unconscious and signals rapport. Lack of mirroring does not always indicate dislike, but consistent resistance to synchronization often indicates emotional distance. Forced mirroring is obvious and ineffective. Natural mirroring happens without effort. Breathing is one of the most overlooked indicators of emotional state. Calm breathing is slow and deep. Stress causes shallow, rapid breathing. People may try to control their face and words, but breathing patterns reveal internal reality. Watch for breathing changes when topics shift. A sudden inhale, breath holding, or irregular rhythm indicates emotional impact. Hands also reveal emotional state. Open hands often signal openness and comfort. Closed fists can signal tension, determination, or suppressed emotion. Hands hidden for extended periods may signal discomfort or self-protection, though context matters. Self-soothing behaviors are particularly telling. Touching the neck, rubbing the arms, adjusting clothing repeatedly, or playing with objects often indicates anxiety or self-regulation. These behaviors help the nervous system calm itself. They are not signs of weakness. They are signs of humanity. Power dynamics also express themselves through body language. Individuals who feel dominant or secure often take up more space. Their movements are relaxed. They do not rush to adjust themselves. Individuals who feel subordinate or uncertain often minimize themselves, crossing limbs, shrinking posture, reducing movement. However, true power is quiet. Overly expansive body language can indicate insecurity masquerading as confidence. Real confidence does not need to perform. This leads to a critical distinction: comfort versus control. Comfort looks relaxed. Control looks managed. A person in control may sit rigidly, speak carefully, and move minimally. A person who is comfortable moves naturally, responds fluidly, and does not appear to monitor themselves constantly. The body cannot maintain control indefinitely. As interactions continue, fatigue sets in, and true patterns emerge. This is why skilled readers observe people over time, not moments. Another vital rule: do not assume intention. Body language tells you what someone is experiencing, not why. Fear does not always mean guilt. Tension does not always mean dishonesty. Distance does not always mean rejection. Your job is to read state, not story. Once you know someone's state, you can adjust your behavior intelligently. If someone appears tense, you might slow the conversation. If someone appears disengaged, you might change the topic or disengage yourself. If someone appears confident, you might speak directly. This is how reading people improves communication, not through confrontation, but through calibration. There is also a warning worth repeating. The more skilled you become at reading body language, the more you must guard against arrogance. Perception is powerful, but it is not omniscient. People are complex, and behavior can be influenced by countless factors you cannot see. Stay curious, not certain. Finally, understand this. Body language never lies, but it also never explains itself. It gives you data. You decide how wisely to use it. In the next chapter, we will explore another channel that reveals more than people realize. The voice. Not the words, but the tone, pace, and rhythm that expose emotion even when content is controlled. Because people can choose their words, but they cannot hide how they sound. Chapter 5. Hearing what people don't say. Words are the most obvious part of communication, and often the least revealing. What truly exposes a person's inner state is not what they say, but how they say it. The human voice carries emotion before meaning. It reflects confidence, fear, resistance, excitement, and uncertainty, even when the speaker is trying to sound controlled. Most people listen for content. Skilled observers listen for tone, pace, and rhythm. The voice is shaped by physiology. Emotion alters breathing, muscle tension, and vocal cord behavior. These changes cannot be fully masked. They leak through pitch shifts, pauses, volume changes, and timing irregularities. This is why you can often sense when something feels off in a conversation, even if the words seem reasonable. The voice is telling a different story. One of the most important vocal elements to notice is pace. When people feel calm and confident, their speech tends to be steady. They are not rushed, and they are not hesitant. Their pace matches the situation naturally. When people feel anxious or pressured, their speech often speeds up. They may rush through sentences, speak without pausing, or interrupt themselves. This is the nervous system attempting to regain control. Slowed speech can also signal emotion. It may indicate thoughtfulness, caution, or emotional weight. But when slowing appears unnatural, accompanied by pauses that feel forced, it can signal uncertainty or internal editing. Again, context is everything. Listen not just to speed, but to consistency. Another revealing element is pitch. Under stress, the voice often rises. This happens because tension tightens the vocal cords. Even individuals who try to sound calm may experience subtle pitch elevation when uncomfortable. A sudden pitch change during a specific topic is meaningful. It indicates emotional impact. Lowered pitch can signal seriousness or authority. But when exaggerated, it may indicate an attempt to sound confident rather than genuine confidence. Authentic authority feels effortless. Performative authority feels heavy. Volume is another important signal. People often speak louder when they want to dominate or mask insecurity. They speak softer when they want to avoid attention or conflict. But sudden volume changes, especially when paired with emotional topics, reveal internal shifts. Someone who suddenly lowers their voice may be signaling secrecy, vulnerability, or discomfort. Someone who suddenly increases volume may be signaling defensiveness or frustration. Pauses are especially powerful. Natural pauses reflect thinking. Forced pauses reflect editing. When someone pauses before answering a simple question, their mind is processing something more than recall. They may be filtering, choosing words carefully, or managing emotion. This does not automatically mean deception. It means effort. Effort is always informative. Another subtle indicator is verbal fillers. Words like um, you know, and kind of often increase under stress. They appear when the brain is buying time or struggling to maintain flow. A sudden increase in fillers during specific topics suggests discomfort or uncertainty. However, some people naturally use fillers even when relaxed. This is why baseline behavior matters. Listen for changes, not habits. Tone carries emotional coloring. Warmth, irritation, sarcasm, boredom, enthusiasm. These are all conveyed through tone more than words. A sentence can be polite in content and hostile in tone. Sarcasm is particularly revealing. It often masks resentment or insecurity while pretending to be humor. Flat tone can signal disinterest, emotional withdrawal, or fatigue. Overly enthusiastic tone can signal performance rather than genuine excitement. Timing between words also matters. Confident speakers allow silence. They do not rush to fill every gap. Anxious speakers often fill silence immediately, fearing loss of control. Silence is not emptiness. It is information. People who are comfortable with silence often feel internally stable. People who fear silence often feel evaluated. Another important vocal signal is alignment. When voice aligns with facial expression and body language, communication feels coherent. When it does not, something is being managed. Someone may smile while speaking in a tense tone. Someone may sound calm while their body is rigid. These mismatches create discomfort, even if listeners cannot articulate why. Your task is not to confront these mismatches. It is to register them. The voice also reveals confidence versus certainty. Confidence sounds grounded. Certainty sounds rigid. People who are confident can say, "I don't know," comfortably. People who are uncertain often overstate certainty to compensate. Listen for absolute language delivered with tension. This often signals insecurity rather than conviction. Emotional suppression also shows up vocally. When people suppress emotion, their voice may sound flat or overly controlled. Emotional variation disappears. This is not calmness. It is restraint. Restraint requires effort. Effort shows. Another overlooked aspect is responsiveness. People who are engaged respond to what was actually said. People who are distracted or defensive respond to what they expected to hear. If someone answers questions slightly off topic, or responds with rehearsed statements that do not quite fit, they may be operating from internal narrative rather than present interaction. This misalignment is subtle but important. Cultural and individual differences must always be respected. Some cultures value restrained vocal expression. Some individuals are naturally monotone. Reading voices requires sensitivity and patience. The goal is not labeling, it is understanding. As you practice listening differently, you will begin to hear layers beneath speech. Conversations will feel richer. You will notice emotional shifts in real time. You will anticipate reactions before they are spoken. This is a powerful skill, but it must be balanced with humility. You are reading signals, not souls. Use this information to communicate better, not to dominate. Adjust your pace. Adjust your tone. Adjust your timing. When you align with someone's emotional state, communication flows. In the next chapter, we will combine everything you've learned so far and move into one of the most revealing areas of human behavior: micro-behaviors. The small, often unconscious actions that expose truth, even when someone believes they are fully in control. Because it is the smallest behaviors that speak the loudest. Chapter 6. The Science of Micro-Behaviors. a brief touch to the face, a sudden shift in posture, a momentary pause in movement. These behaviors are easy to dismiss, and that is exactly why they are so revealing. Micro-behaviors are not dramatic. They are subtle. They occur in fractions of seconds, and they are almost impossible to control consistently. This is where real reading begins. Micro-behaviors emerge from the nervous system, not intention. They appear when emotion spikes, when stress increases, or when internal conflict surfaces. Because they are automatic, they often reveal what a person is experiencing before they realize it themselves. The key word here is before. The brain processes emotion first, then attempts to regulate it. Micro-behaviors live in that gap. One of the most common micro-behaviors is self-touch. Touching the face, neck, throat, arms, or hands often serves a calming function. These actions stimulate nerve endings that help regulate emotional discomfort. When people feel uneasy, uncertain, or pressured, self-touch increases. A brief rub of the neck during a difficult question, a quick brush of the face after an unexpected comment, hands clasping and unclasping repeatedly. These are not nervous habits. They are regulatory responses. The important detail is when they occur. If self-touch increases during a specific topic or interaction, it indicates emotional relevance. The body is soothing itself in response to something that matters. Another revealing microbehavior is behavioral interruption. This happens when someone begins an action and abruptly stops. For example, starting to gesture and then pulling the hand back, beginning to speak and cutting themselves off, leaning forward and then retreating. Interruptions signal internal conflict. The person is reacting and then correcting. Correction means management. Management means awareness. Awareness means emotion. Eye behaviors at the micro level are especially telling. Rapid blinking often increases under stress. Sudden gaze aversion during specific moments can signal emotional load, not guilt, but processing. Eyes may freeze momentarily when someone is surprised or caught off guard. These changes are brief but meaningful when they align with context. Micro-expressions also fall into this category, but they are often misunderstood. Micro-expressions are involuntary facial expressions that appear and disappear quickly. They reflect genuine emotion before conscious control intervenes. However, they should never be treated as standalone truth. A flash of fear does not mean danger. A flash of anger does not mean hostility. A flash of sadness does not mean weakness. It means emotion surfaced. Your job is not to interpret immediately, but to note the appearance and watch what follows. Another important micro-behavior is pace disruption. People have natural rhythms. When those rhythms change suddenly, speech slows, movements pause, breathing shifts, something has changed internally. This disruption is often more revealing than the behavior itself. A confident speaker who suddenly hesitates. A calm listener who suddenly fidgets. A relaxed posture that tightens without explanation. These moments are not random. Microbehaviors also appear in object interaction. People often redirect nervous energy toward objects, pens, phones, glasses, clothing. Repetitive handling, adjusting, or gripping often increases when emotional pressure rises. Again, this is not weakness. It is self-regulation. Stillness, paradoxically, can also be a micro-behavior. When someone becomes unusually still, it often means they are exerting control. This kind of stillness feels different from calm. It feels held. Held behavior requires effort. Effort leaks elsewhere. Another category of micro-behavior involves timing errors. People respond too quickly or too slowly relative to the situation. A question is answered instantly when reflection would be natural, or a simple response is delayed unexpectedly. Timing errors suggest internal calculation. Calculation is not dishonesty, it is significance. Micro-behaviors also reveal hierarchy perception. People unconsciously adjust behavior based on who they believe holds power. They may lower their voice, minimize movement, or increase deference. Conversely, they may expand, interrupt, or assert. These shifts happen quickly and often unconsciously. Watch how someone behaves when a new person enters the interaction. Behavior often changes before words do. The most common mistake when observing micro-behaviors is trying to interpret each one individually. This leads to paranoia and misreading. Micro-behaviors are meaningful only in patterns. One behavior is noise. Repeated behavior in specific contexts is signal. This is why skilled observers slow down their conclusions. They collect data. They allow behavior to repeat. They observe across time and situations. Micro-behaviors are best understood as emotional punctuation. They mark moments of internal emphasis. They tell you when something matters. They do not tell you why. That distinction matters. Reading people well requires patience and humility. The more you observe, the less certain you should become about quick explanations. Certainty is the enemy of accuracy. Use micro-behaviors to guide attention, not judgment. If you notice discomfort, soften your approach. If you notice tension, slow down. If you notice disengagement, reconsider direction. This is intelligent communication. As you integrate facial cues, body language, vocal signals, and micro-behaviors, something powerful happens. You stop reacting blindly. You begin responding deliberately. You become calm where others become confused. Chapter 7. How liars accidentally expose themselves. Most people misunderstand deception. They imagine liars as nervous, shifty-eyed individuals who can't sit still and avoid eye contact. This stereotype is comforting, but wrong. In reality, many liars appear calm, articulate, and convincing. Some are even more relaxed than honest people. The truth is more complex. Lying is not a behavior. It is a mental process. And that process leaves traces. To understand how liars expose themselves, you must first abandon the idea that deception has a single look. There is no universal tell. There is only strain, and strain always leaks. The key difference between truth and deception is cognitive load. Telling the truth requires recall. Lying requires construction, monitoring, and correction. The liar must invent information, ensure consistency, track your reaction, suppress genuine emotion, and remember what was said previously, all at the same time. This mental multitasking is difficult, even for skilled deceivers, and difficulty shows. One of the most common ways liars expose themselves is through overmanagement. Because they fear being caught, liars often try to control everything: posture, facial expression, tone, eye contact, and word choice. This creates behavior that feels unnatural, not because it is nervous, but because it is too deliberate. The body looks managed rather than relaxed. Movement becomes stiff or overly precise. Facial expressions appear slightly delayed. Smiles linger longer than necessary or disappear abruptly. Honest people are not perfect communicators, but they are fluid. Liars often look composed, but not at ease. Another major indicator is inconsistency, not in facts, but in behavior. Most liars rehearse content. What they rarely rehearse is emotional alignment. Their words may remain consistent, but their emotional reactions shift subtly across retellings. A story told once with confidence may later be told with restraint. Details that once seemed insignificant may suddenly be emphasized. These changes do not mean the story is false, but they suggest maintenance. Truth does not need maintenance. Timing is another critical clue. Honest people answer simple questions quickly and complex questions slowly. Liars often reverse this pattern. They may answer simple questions with hesitation, buying time to construct an answer. Or they may respond to complex questions too quickly, offering rehearsed responses that bypass natural reflection. Speed that does not match difficulty is meaningful. Another revealing factor is language precision. Liars often believe that adding detail makes them more believable. In reality, excessive detail, especially when unsolicited, often signals fabrication. They may specify exact times, unnecessary descriptions, or overly structured explanations. This is not because detail is suspicious, but because defensive detail feels different from natural recollection. Honest memories are imperfect. They include gaps, uncertainty, and approximation. Fabricated accounts often appear unusually tidy. Emotion is another area where deception leaks. Liars struggle with emotional timing. They may express emotion too late, too early, or not at all. For example, someone describing a stressful event without any emotional coloring or with exaggerated emotion may be managing perception rather than reliving experience. Emotion tied to truth appears naturally and proportionately. Another exposure point is response focus. Honest people respond to questions. Liars often respond to implications. Instead of answering what was asked, they address what they fear you are thinking. This leads to defensive answers that overshoot the question. For example, denying an accusation that was never made. This behavior reveals internal threat perception. Microbehaviors also intensify under deception. Self-soothing increases. Behavioral interruptions become more frequent. Stillness becomes rigid rather than calm. Breathing patterns shift unpredictably. But here is a critical warning. Stress does not equal deception. Honest people can appear nervous. Liars can appear calm. The difference lies in where the stress appears and when it spikes. Stress tied to specific questions, topics, or moments suggests relevance. General nervousness suggests personality or context. Another overlooked indicator is correction behavior. Liars often correct themselves, not to clarify, but to adjust. They revise phrasing mid-sentence. They backtrack unnecessarily. They substitute words quickly. This constant editing reflects internal monitoring. Honest speakers correct for accuracy. Liars correct for safety. You can hear the difference. One of the most reliable exposures is emotional mismatch. A person may describe an event involving loss, conflict, or danger with emotional flatness. Or they may describe something trivial with excessive intensity. This mismatch does not prove lying, but it raises questions. Remember, deception is not about fooling others. It is about managing internal conflict. This is why prolonged deception is exhausting. As time passes, control weakens. Patterns emerge. Leaks multiply. Skilled readers do not confront liars aggressively. Confrontation raises defenses and improves performance. Instead, they observe patiently. They allow space. They notice repetition. Truth surfaces when pressure is low. There is also an ethical boundary worth stating clearly. The goal of reading deception is not to play detective in every interaction. It is to protect yourself from manipulation, not to accuse recklessly. Mislabeling honesty as deception damages trust permanently. Use this knowledge sparingly and responsibly. As your awareness sharpens, you will become less reactive and more grounded. You will sense when something deserves attention and when it does not. In the next chapter, we will explore a different angle, one that often goes unnoticed: confidence versus insecurity, and how people unintentionally reveal which one is driving them. Because insecurity speaks loudly, even when confidence is claimed. Chapter 8. Reading confidence versus insecurity. Confidence and insecurity are often mistaken for personality traits. In reality, they are states, not identities. The same person can feel confident in one situation and deeply insecure in another. What matters is not how someone describes themselves, but how their behavior adjusts under pressure. Confidence is quiet. Insecurity is loud or carefully hidden. The mistake most people make is equating confidence with dominance. They assume the most vocal person in the room is the most secure. Often, the opposite is true. True confidence does not seek validation. It does not rush. It does not need to be seen. Insecurity, on the other hand, is constantly negotiating approval. One of the clearest indicators of confidence is emotional stability. Confident individuals experience emotion like anyone else, but they are not controlled by it. They respond rather than react. Their mood does not swing dramatically with minor challenges. Insecure individuals are more reactive. Small disagreements feel personal. Neutral feedback feels threatening. Silence feels like rejection. This reactivity appears in behavior long before it is acknowledged consciously. Watch how people handle being wrong. Confident people correct themselves without embarrassment. They adjust. They move on. Being wrong does not threaten their identity. Insecure people defend mistakes aggressively or avoid responsibility altogether. They explain excessively, shift blame, or minimize importance. Defense reveals fear. Ease reveals security. Another strong indicator is attention direction. Confident individuals focus outward. They listen. They ask thoughtful questions. They respond to what is actually said. Insecure individuals focus inward. They monitor how they are perceived. They think about what to say next instead of listening fully. This inward focus often results in interruptions, delayed responses, or answers that miss the point. The voice also reveals the difference. Confident speech is grounded. It has natural pauses. It does not rush to fill silence. It allows space. Insecure speech often feels compressed. It rushes, over-explains, or circles back unnecessarily. Certainty delivered with tension is not confidence. Calm delivered with openness is. Another revealing factor is boundary behavior. Confident people set boundaries naturally. They say no without drama. They do not over-justify their limits. Insecure people struggle with boundaries. They either over-accommodate to gain approval or over-assert to protect fragile self-worth. Over-aggression often masks insecurity. Watch how people respond when boundaries are challenged. Confident individuals remain steady. Insecure individuals escalate or withdraw. Comparison behavior is another giveaway. Insecure people compare themselves constantly, subtly, or openly. They mention others' achievements, downplay others' success, or seek reassurance indirectly. Confident people do not need comparison to feel stable. They measure progress internally. Status signaling also reveals insecurity. Excessive name-dropping, credential listing, or emphasis on authority often signals a need to establish worth. True confidence does not announce itself. Another important difference appears in control needs. Insecure individuals often try to control outcomes, conversations, or perceptions. They interrupt. They steer topics. They resist unpredictability. Confident individuals tolerate uncertainty. They adapt. Adaptability is strength. Body language reinforces these patterns. Confident posture is relaxed, not rigid. Movements are unhurried. Space is occupied comfortably. Insecure posture fluctuates, either shrinking or expanding unnaturally. Movements are either excessive or restricted. Eye behavior also differs. Confident eye contact is natural and intermittent. Insecure eye contact is either avoided or forced. Forced eye contact feels intense rather than connected. Another overlooked signal is humor. Confident humor is inclusive. It does not target insecurity. It does not seek superiority. Insecure humor often disguises criticism, self-deprecation, or dominance. Listen carefully to what humor protects. One of the most subtle indicators is how people handle silence. Confident people are comfortable with silence. They do not rush to fill it. Insecure people fear silence. They talk to maintain control or avoid perceived judgment. Silence reveals self-relationship. Another key distinction is how people receive attention. Confident individuals accept attention without inflation or discomfort. They neither deflect excessively nor seek more. Insecure individuals either crave attention or reject it awkwardly. Both behaviors signal instability. It is also important to recognize false confidence. False confidence mimics dominance, certainty, and assertiveness, but lacks flexibility. It breaks under challenge. True confidence, whether consciously bends, recognized or not, false confidence shatters words. When challenged respectfully, beneath the obvious confident gestures, individuals power is being asserted, tested, insecure individuals become understanding these subtle dynamics is key to reading people instantly. Confidence accurately power is not always about manipulation. It is about choose who to trust, control over attention, and when to disengage, and the ability to guide outcomes. But here is the most important truth. Those who appear quiet is not perfection, hold more power than the loudest voices in the room. People who accept themselves do not need to dominant may be compensated. As you sharpen this awareness, you will begin noticing how often insecurity drives behavior that appears powerful on the surface. Who waits? Who allows pauses? Who finishes sentences? Dominant people control the rhythm without being obvious. They speak at natural intervals, guiding the conversation's flow, while giving just enough room for others to contribute. Submissive individuals either yield too much or fill the gaps nervously, losing their influence. Observe the pace and timing of speech. People with authority rarely rush their words. They pause naturally, creating a sense of command and control. Those seeking power often speak rapidly, attempting to dominate the auditory space. Slow, deliberate speech conveys confidence. Rapid, erratic speech signals instability or effort. Another indicator is body orientation. Powerful individuals orient their torso toward the subject or listener in a balanced, relaxed manner. They occupy space comfortably. Those with less perceived power may shrink, angle away, or unconsciously cede space to others. Hands reveal a lot about influence and intention. Open, deliberate gestures indicate authority. Closed or repetitive gestures indicate hesitation or a desire to protect oneself. Subtle mirroring of the other person's gestures can also be a sign of skilled influence, demonstrating rapport while maintaining control. Eye behavior is critical. Powerful individuals maintain natural eye contact without staring. They use gaze strategically, to punctuate points, to connect, to assert subtle authority. Those seeking dominance may overcompensate with intense staring or avoid gaze to mask insecurity. Microexpressions also indicate negotiation of power. A fleeting smirk, raised brow, or tightened jaw during conversation can reveal subtle attempts to assert dominance or resist influence. Observing these in clusters rather than isolation helps you detect the underlying hierarchy in the interaction. Power is also expressed vocally. Authority manifests in calm, controlled tone, moderate volume, and deliberate pauses. Insecurity, or attempts to dominate, are often revealed through fluctuating pitch, rushed delivery, or overemphasis. Another subtle but powerful cue is listening behavior. The most influential individuals are often the best listeners. They absorb information, acknowledge understanding, and respond thoughtfully. Those attempting dominance often interrupt, speak over others, or monopolize the conversation. Spatial behavior also matters. People negotiate power unconsciously through proximity. Confident individuals comfortably occupy space without invading others. Submissive individuals may shrink or withdraw. Aggressive individuals may encroach on space to intimidate, but this is often artificial and easily read once you know what to look for. Another overlooked dynamic is reaction to challenges. Powerful individuals remain composed under questioning. They respond logically, calmly, and with subtle authority. Insecure or performative individuals react emotionally, defensively, or attempt to regain control through forcefulness. The balance of speaking versus listening is another signal. Those in control often speak less, but with impact. They allow others to reveal more, absorbing information to guide their next move. Those attempting dominance speak more, often overcompensating for lack of true influence. Micro-behaviors, such as subtle postural shifts, facial micro-expressions, and timing adjustments, often betray attempts to assert or resist power. For example, a sudden lean forward may indicate an effort to dominate. A slight lean back may indicate submission or recalibration. It's also important to notice emotional leakage in power dynamics. Confidence, frustration, irritation, and insecurity all appear in brief, unconscious signals. Recognizing these leaks helps you understand not only who holds power, but who feels pressure and why. One of the most critical insights in reading power dynamics is that dominance is temporary. Influence is lasting. The loudest or most aggressive person may appear dominant initially, but sustained influence is earned through consistency, composure, and strategic communication. Observing how people react over time, rather than isolated moments, reveals the true hierarchy. Finally, ethical observation is key. Reading power dynamics is not about manipulation. It is about awareness. By understanding who exerts influence, who is vulnerable, and how behavior signals internal states, you can navigate conversations more effectively, protect yourself from coercion, and create mutually beneficial interactions.